Death is for the Dying Epitaph, a mini episode of the podcast. I'm your host, Rebecca Richmond, and today we're talking, as always, with the podcast producer, Marco. Hey, Marco.
Hello, hello. Hi, everybody. Nice to see you again.
Good to see you. Good to see you. This episode, we're talking active dying.
Active Dying. This episode is brought to you by Active Dying,
Yes.
a
Yeah.
necessary stage in the dying process.
Yes. One might say it's the
It is the main stage. You're right.
main stage of the dying process. So I have a question for you, Marco.
Sure.
Have you ever seen someone actively die?
I have. And it has been recent. So when we opened up this season, we opened up with our friend Gata and we, paid homage to her. And I was part of that dying process. I saw everything from beginning to end. I saw all the different stages. However, I wish I was armed with the information that I have now because I would have been able to see those stages a little bit more clearly. And I probably would have done some different things, maybe said my final goodbyes to her and been a little bit less nonchalant about it because I was very much knowing that she would eventually come around or that I would be present at the time that she passed away, but I was not. And it's a small regret I have, but at the same time, when I look back on it, yeah, there were signs and I didn't pay attention to it.
Yeah, it's very interesting. I until I started talking with Kathy, the death doula, and she I'll put it in the links to the chat, but she has this like little pamphlet that's like, this is what dying looks like. I
Hmm.
was like, because I never have seen anyone actively dying. I saw Gata once when she was close to dying, but I didn't
Hmm.
see any of the signs. And I realized like we don't see this. People don't talk about it. Uh, and we certainly don't see it in movies and
No.
television. It's just this sort of like elegant gasp and then you die. There's none of this like, oh, they start, you know,
Gulping for
losing
air.
color. They start losing color. Their hands and feet get cold. Their breathing changes, and it sounds like they call it agonal breathing. It sounds like they're in pain when they're not, but like they can't swallow. You know, all of this stuff that does not it's not sexy, and it does not make it into the movies.
No, it does not.
But the problem is that then when we see it, we misinterpret it
Yes.
or we find it very, very scary and we don't necessarily respond appropriately.
Of course. I mean, it makes total sense. Like, how would you know how to respond when all you've been fed your entire life is this wonderful, picturesque version of how somebody was supposed to go with the sun beaming in through the window and everything is at peace and all that. And the reality of it is not that. I mean,
No.
if I think about like when my grandmother passed away many years ago, there was something that I remember Seth or one of our guests, I can't remember exactly who it was, said that certain people will wait until they're alone when they pass away. And I feel like my grandmother did that because effectively she passed away when nobody was around, right? And who knows if there's any truth to that or not, but when I look back on the situation, I'd like to think of it that way because a lot of times people don't want to be burdens to other folks. They want
Yeah.
to they want to make the transition for themselves and for all their loved ones around them a lot smoother. And so they may think, maybe illogically, that dying alone without anybody around them is the least painful way to go. And, depending on your situation, it could be. But for the vast majority of us, probably not.
Yeah.
Um, I think we all have that kind of preconceived notion of what our deathbed will look like. Like we want to be there, surrounded by the people that, care about us. You read about it in every single obituary, every
Yeah.
single one. Oh, so and so passed away quietly in their sleep, surrounded by their family. Now, whether that's the truth or not,
It can be.
it
Like
can
it can.
be.
And certainly, if somebody's paying attention to the signs, you can make that happen,
Right.
you know? Some of the time, no guarantees. But certainly, the whole Gata talked about dying in clean sheets and, like we think that we're going to again, we're going to have control over it, like I talked in our last episode. And you have to let go of any preconceived ideas of having control. You can plan,
Mhm.
that's one of the things that a death doula can do is, a recognize when the end is near so that they can, create an atmosphere. Like, you talk to them, they'll talk about like doing, do you want candles? Do you want some sort of anointment? All of that. So it's if you know enough, there's a possibility that you can create the atmosphere that people want, but there's no guarantees in life
That's true.
or death.
That's true. That's true. What would your deathbed be like, do you think? What would you want?
I mean, I think it's the same for everybody. I want to die at home in peace and, not in pain. Loved ones, well, the whole nine yards, some candle.
It makes me wonder, like, if people have anything more than that. Like, do they want something that's bigger or more extravagant?
Some people probably do.
I guess so.
The other thing, I wouldn't mind like going in a heart attack in the woods, something like that.
Oh, that'd be fantastic. Especially in
Yeah.
the fall too. That would be oof. That'd be lovely.
Yeah. But you also experienced a more recent death, and I believe she died in Italy. But
Yes. Yes.
you mentioned that this particular episode was helpful for you
It
in that.
was. It was because so for those, you know, maybe listening for the first time, I have a half my family is in Italy, half my family's in Canada. I'm the only one living here in the States with, my wife and my kids. And last week I lost one of my aunts in Italy. And she was very, very important to myself and my family. The best way that I can describe her is that she was the bridge that connected us to Italy and kept that connection of home for both my parents. And I always felt at home when I went there. And they went out of their way to make sure that we were taken care of whenever we would visit, however infrequent it was. But there were descriptions of her death that were relayed to me, this past week, where I kind of knew early on, even before she passed away, that certain signs were showing up. And having recalled everything that I heard in this episode with Brooks describing a lot of, what that dying process looks like, I thought to myself, okay, she's she's on her way. And part of me wanted to give her a message, like I wanted to record myself and have it translate in Italian because my Italian's pretty terrible, and have my cousin show it to her before she went away. But just like all with all good intentions, other priorities got in the way. And I didn't even know she was even conscious at the time to even do it. But I'm still going to do it for them because I feel it's important for them to know
Yeah.
how important she was in my life.
Yeah.
So I'm grateful that I had the knowledge, and not only that, I had the tools to process it. I didn't grieve as long as I thought I would. I think things would change. I think things would be different if I was actually at home with my parents, because I feel like I can process these emotions pretty quickly, but knowing that my folks are probably going to take a little bit more time to go through these things, and that would be a little bit harder for me to kind of to take on emotionally.
Yeah. I can see that. I do. So one thing I just want to shout out there, there is a video channel called Hospice Nurse Julie. And she has been, if you want to actually not just hear the description of, but she has videos and discussions about the active dying process, what it looks like, what it sounds like, and what are some of the mistakes people can make that actually make it harder for their loved ones when they're dying, because what they need when they're dying is not the same thing as what they would need if they were still, I guess, actively living.
Right, right.
So I do want to shout out, definitely recommend that. Check that out. She's um has some really great videos that can dive into this in a way that obviously you and I can't,
No,
not being hospice nurses.
no, we're not. You know what the fun thing is? Like today, I was listening to some previous episodes, and it finally clicked for me the difference between palliative care and hospice care. I finally understood the difference because as it was being described, I'm like, well, these are basically two sides of the same coin. And I realized it's not. If I can maybe give an analogy to some folks out there, it's almost like, bad analogy, but it's almost like you're in a race, right? Death is the finish line. And if you're running and you don't see the end is near and you just want to be more comfortable, that's what palliative care is. But when the finish line is in sight, that's when hospice should take over. And
Yeah.
then that's, even when we talked about the last epitaph where people are, maybe uh, declining, whenever you feel that last decline is happening, that's when you should probably consider doing hospice.
Yeah, and one of the things, the I I think our guests talk about, Kathy talks about, certainly with me, is that people will wait until the last minute to get on hospice.
Hmm.
But that means you're putting off getting really effective pain care. They're not being going to be able to develop a relationship with their hospice carers. There's a lot of things that hospice can do, and yeah, it's geared towards the final 6 months. But if a doctor agrees that the death is within 6 months, there's no reason not to get them onto hospice, unless you're in a situation where, with such as Mara and Pat are in, where that actually does cut off some of the care that you need.
Right.
So, yeah, it's definitely better to consider it. Or, there's no like we put my mom on hospice. She stabilized. They stopped coming. That was it. Like there's no, oh,
You're
now
not
we're not going to.
inconveniencing anybody.
Yeah, we're not going to, do you only get one shot at hospice? No, that's not the case
Right.
at all. They will, once the situation changes again, then you get reevaluated for hospice.
Yeah. So I think that's one of the things I think people can take from this is that if you learn or know what active dying looks like, or at least recognize some of the symptoms, you can actually get that process started early and maybe make that end of life situation more comfortable for your loved one. I'm going to quiz you now.
Okay. Oh no,
What,
I
uh,
didn't study.
uh-huh, I know you didn't study. That's why I'm asking. So we've been
Panic in
talking
my
about,
eyes.
we've been
Yeah.
talking about what the signs are, and I think
Yeah.
you know what the signs are. So let's kind of recap for our audience. what are the things, or what does active dying look like? What are the things that a person should pay attention to?
So awareness, like how much are they're there. People who are dying are going to be less cognizant of their surroundings. Um, they um, are going to have trouble breathing. Their skin is going to change. Their circulation is going to go away.
Mhm.
So their fingers are going to get cold and maybe start changing color towards blue. Um, Eating. So eating is a big one. If they stop eating, if they stop drinking, um, that is definitely a sign. Um, and then you may get like sort of a using a spike of energy to
Mhm.
um use up kind of the last of the energy, but then that will fade. And then you'll see basically everything become more and more, and you'll see that muscle, they don't have the ability to contract their muscles, so they can't swallow, they can't control their urine, they'll be incontinent, so they'll just get weaker and weaker and weaker.
One more, one
Oh
big one.
no, the breathing.
The breathing. Exactly.
Yeah, yeah, so breathing will change, they'll become more and more sporadic, and they may be like gulping for air like fish.
Yeah. Yeah. The breathing one, that was the big one, at least for my aunt that passed away last week. That one, and also not eating as well.
Yeah, I think that the gulping, and it's the thing that freaks people out the most
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
it's like they're struggling to breathe, and they are struggling to breathe, but they also don't need the oxygen.
Right.
So so that's just the body slowly shutting down.
Yeah. And so if you recognize all of those signs, or at least some of them, maybe hospice is a good step in the right
Well,
direction.
I mean,
Maybe
if some of the signs are going to be a little bit late for hospice, let me put it that
that's
way.
true,
Yeah,
actually. But you could at least get the comfort kit ready to go
yeah,
and have that thing on the standby just in case.
yeah. But consult with your doctor, whoever. If you think the end is coming, reach out to your doctor, and they can get you in touch with hospice.
Again, all the lawyers are happy that we said that.
Yes, yes, and also remember, hospice is free for everyone.
That's right. Everyone tends to forget that it is available for everybody, no matter where you are, who you are.
That is one part of the dying process that it does feel like really kind of easy, straightforward, um, and as I said, free for everybody, available.
Right on. Well, we'll share some resources and the links to this video for those folks that are maybe wanting to go into hospice, but I think that's a good spot to end it. And thank you very much to all of you for joining us. As always, we appreciate you spending time with us each and every week. And if you want to continue this conversation with us, we've been more than happy to engage with you. You can reach us at Life is for the Living podcast at gmail.com, or you can reach us on all of our socials at Life is for the L on Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. That'll get you to our YouTube channel. I think that's it.
All right.
We'll
Well,
wrap it up
as
there.
always, pleasure talking to you.
Pleasure talking to you, and a pleasure talking and seeing all of you. Have a good day, everybody. Bye.
Bye.